Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial on how to use Unity and Spine together to create animation timelines. So the first thing you need to do, of course, is to create your Unity project. So I have already done that. And we are now in this project. I'm just going to change the layout here to show you the default layout so that everyone is kind of seeing the same thing as I am. So once you have created your project, what you want to do is go to the Spine website. And on Spine, you look for Spine Unity download. So it's esotericsoftware.com/spine-unity-download. And this will get you to the download section. There's two things you need to download, which is the Spine Unity package. So you get the same Unity package as the Spine version you have. This is 3.8, which is compatible with Unity 2017.1 up to 2020.2. And you also want the Timeline Expansion UPM package. Once you have downloaded those two things, you want to extract this zip file that you got from the Spine Timeline 3.8. So this Spine Unity 3.8 thing here is a Unity package, where this thing here is a zip file. And so I have those files here somewhere. Where are they? Let me look for them here in my directory. Spine. Unity and Unity plugins. Yeah, there you go. So I have this file here, Unity package, and then I have extracted the Spine Timeline plugin. So the next thing you want to do is drag and drop the Spine Unity package into your Unity project here. I have already done that, so it's going to start importing some stuff. When you do that import, I'm just going to show you here. You will be prompted, you will be asked what things you want to import. You don't want to import the spine examples. So what you want to do is uncheck spine examples. Well, you can, but I mean, this is kind of useless. It's only examples, right? You don't want that in your project, but you do want the entire spine thing. Now I cannot select it because I already have installed it. But that's what you want to do. So don't select the examples, but do select the Spine runtime. Once you have done that, then the next thing we need to do is to install the Timeline Utilities package. So you go into Window, Package Manager, and in Package Manager, you click on the plus sign here. There's a drop-down menu. There's a drop-down menu, come on. Unity is a little bit slow today. Okay, so you get the drop down and you have three options: add package from disk, from tarball, or from git URL. So as far as I know, there is no git URL for the Spine plugins. So you go from add package from disk, and there you're going to point to the JSON file. So you go into, once again, I go into my G-Rate, Spine, Unity plugins. I go into the esoteric timeline thing, and I select package.json. So once I do that, it is going to start importing the Spine timeline, which I also already have installed. Spine, if it is properly installed, you should be seeing two things. When you type timeline here, you should get Spine, the timeline, which should be installed, and Spine, Unity registry in projects. So you should see in your project, Spine and timeline, sorry, two things. You should have the Spine timeline extensions, and you should have the timeline installed. Once those things are done, we're ready to start animating our character. But first of all, we need to import our character. So I'm going to create a new folder here. Call it art. There we go. And in that art, I'm going to import a character that I have exported from Spine for Unity. I'm not going to go into details on how to export a Spine animation for Unity. There's plenty of videos on that around on the internet, but what you should know is that the result of this should be 3 files: a .atlas.txt file, a JSON file, and a PNG file. So the atlas.txt file is going to contain all the information about the atlas, the sprite atlas of the character or whatever it is you're going to animate. The JSON is going to contain all the data about the skeleton, the bones, the animations, the skins, all of that is in the JSON. And the PNG is just the actual textures of your character. So you want to take all of that and you drag and drop it into your project. Here, I drag and drop it in my art folder because that's how I like to organize my things. And then in Charlie 125, now, as you can see, I'm just going to change this because I like to see things this way. This has imported the atlas.txt file. It has imported the body parts, which is the PNG file. It has also imported the JSON, which is body parts JSON. But it has also created 3 new files. It has created an Atlas asset file for Unity, which is going to map the body parts to specific locations. It's going to add a material, and it's going to add a skeleton data, which is the actual character we can put in our scene. Once you have done that, you can check that your animations are all working by previewing those animations, selecting the skeleton data. And if it all looks good, then you can just click Create Animation Reference Assets. So those animation reference assets are really important because they're the things that you're going to be using to animate the character. And so if everything worked fine, then you should be able to create those things. And you should not have any errors in the console, just one thing saying that everything was imported properly. If not, then you probably have to correct some things in your model. It is not always a success story on the first time. I can speak for that because we've had several problems ourselves in the first times we exported some characters. But that's what you should be seeing if everything is done properly. So now that we have this, we can actually take this Charlie body part skeleton data and we can drag and drop this onto our scene. And when we do that, it's going to ask us, do we want a skeleton animation, a skeleton graphic UI, or a skeleton mechanism? And it's going to be an animation here. Now, our character is very big. If that happens, well, you have several options. You can change the scale on the screen. That's one option. Another option, which is the one I prefer, is to define the scale more precisely here. And I'm going to give it a scale of 0.003. which is going to be pretty much about half the height of our screen here. Great. So we have our character Charlie, which is the main character of our game Asphalia. And first thing you can see is that there's a weird hand and weird arm going on. It's because we have not set a default animation, so it's just showing all the textures. If we do set an animation, so we select the spine game object here on the scene, and we then just go here and select an animation name, and then we go with idle default, and then it's going to only show the things that are relevant to the idle default animation. And if we press play, the character should be animating properly. Brilliant. Great. Okay. So now that we have this, also, by the way, if you're using the universal render pipeline, note that you should also be installing the URP shaders UPM package here, so that you can actually use the proper shaders to benefit from whatever 2D lighting you're using, if you're using 2D lights. Anyways, let's move on with now creating that animation we wanted. So to create an animation, we need to add, and I I could add this directly on this object, or I could add an empty game object that is going to serve as the director. Let's actually do this. I'm going to call this one Timeline Manager and add a Playable Director component. So I click on Add Component and type Playable Director. And so our Timeline Manager here is the movie director, essentially. He's going to tell every actor, be it an animation, be it a sound sample, be it whatever you want. I mean, I'm not going to go into in depth on how Timeline works. There's also plenty of videos on this. I'm going to focus mostly on using Timeline with spine animations. So we created the Playable Director, and now what we need to do is to actually create a Timeline playable asset, because without that we cannot animate anything. So let's just go here in our assets. We're going to create a folder. We're going to call that animations, for example, or maybe timelines. Yeah, timelines. There we go. And in timelines, I'm going to right click, create, and select timeline. There we go. And we are going to call here this one, Charlie Comes Home. So this is an animation when Charlie gets back home. We now can take our Timeline Manager again and drag and drop Charlie Comes Home onto the playable. Other option would be to click on this little target icon and it will show us all the playable assets that exist. There's only one right now, so we can select that one. Whatever is the option of your choice, just go with that. So we have this, and now we can start working on our actual timeline. So if we double click Charlie Comes Home, this is going to open up the timeline window. So I don't like the organization of the scene right now. Excuse me. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. It had to go. So I want to reorganize my my Unity a little bit. What I like to do is have the timeline. Oops. Let's timeline like this. I'm going to take the hierarchy and drop it on the right hand side of the inspector. That's just the way I like to set up my stuff in Unity. Obviously it's to everyone's personal preferences. I like to see my console in the bottom here, and I like to have my game view here. That's how I like to do things. Now, not everyone likes to do it this way. It's a question of personal preferences. So let's now dive into editing our timeline. Right now, we need, if we want to edit the timeline and give it the context of the scene, which we need because the timeline is going to work on different elements that are on the scene. That's the reason why we have a playable director. You have to select the object containing the playable director you want to work on. So on my hierarchy here, I'm going to select the timeline manager. And now I can start working on the timeline. If I didn't, I wouldn't be able to have all the options I needed. So we have now selected the timeline. The first thing we're going to do is add an audio track. So I do a right click here, or I could click on the plus icon, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to click audio track. And this is going to allow me to manage audio on my timeline. Now, right now, it needs an audio source. So if I did not select the timeline manager, if I selected this, for example, and clicked on this, I would not be able to assign the audio listener because it needs the context of the scene. That's why we need to select timeline manager, and now we can finally do this. So if you don't have this, if you don't have the possibility to set this source, it's probably because you don't have the right object selected. Okay, so select your timeline manager, and then we can assign an audio source. What audio source? We don't have an audio source. Let's add an audio source to Charlie here. So add component, audio source. And there we go. We don't need to do anything special here. By default, it's going to be properly configured for us. So that's nice. Except if you want 3D sound. But I mean, you know how to configure audio sources. This is not the topic of this video. If you don't, you can look it up. You'll find plenty of resources that will explain this. So anyways, we get back to our timeline manager, and now we can click on the target icon and select our audio source, which is the spine game object we added the audio source to. Now we want to add some audio clips. So I have some audio here in my project, kitchen entry 1, 2, 3, 4, which are the 4 phases. And sorry, this is going to be in French. I can select all of those and drag and drop them and then rearrange them the way I want on my scene. So that's perfectly fine. So let's just start by playing this and see if everything works. There's two ways to debug your timeline. You can do it out of play mode with this preview mode.
Je suis rentré!
Now, while this works, it will not, if you have any extra code that is running that depends on your timeline, it will not run that. But we don't really care right now. So
Je suis rentré!
This preview mode, okay? So Charlie gets home. This is in French, sorry about that. But she says, hey, I am home.
Baya?
Baya. Baya's the name of her dog.
Baya!
She can't find her, so she calls her.
T'es où?
And she asks her where she is. Now, we are going to add an animation on top of this because we want to animate Charlie. So for that, we're going to right-click. And so you'll see that there's an animation track. This is how you animate with the classic Unity animation system. It requires a component with an animator. We're going to look into this a little bit later, but right now what we want is to add a spine animation. And if you have properly installed your spine runtime, you should have the spine Unity playables here. And from this, there's 3 different options. You can have a spine animation state graphic track, a spine animation state track, or a spine skeleton flip track. Here, what we want is the animation state track. So let's click that. And now we need a skeleton animation. Luckily for us, we already have one. It's the spine is our Charlie here. If we click on this target, we should see it. And we can now start dragging and dropping different animations. So there's two different ways to add a clip to the timeline, to the track. You can just right click here and say add spine animation state clip, or from reference asset. It will pull up a list of reference assets. Or you can just go in the reference assets folder here and select the animation you want. Let's start by having a cinematic introduction here. There we go. This is a pretty long animation. And let's look at what it does.
Je suis rentré! Baya? Baya! T'es où?
So now we need to synchronize all this with our audio. But that's not too difficult, right? What we can do is just scroll here and look at which frame Charlie opens her mouth. There we go. I am home. Okay. So this I am home thing is just here. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to make sure that like the peak of this is when she opens the mouth. Okay, I'm home. There we go. This should be fine. I'm going to eyeball it very quickly just so that this video doesn't take too long. So there she says Baya. That's the second line. So I'm just going to control click this to only move the other ones. So she opens her mouth once, twice. So what I want is to kind of put the waveform so that it kind of matches Baya. Baya. Okay, this looks fine. I can just
Baya?
Baya. Baya.
Baya?
Okay. And then we can just select this. Let's move here. Baya. Yeah, this should be fine.
Baya!
Yeah, right. And then let's do the last one. Where are you? Where are you?
T'es où?
Maybe I started that one a little too early.
T'es où?
Yeah. Just a little bit later. Okay, so we should be fine here.
Je suis rentré. Baya?
I think this one is a little too early.
Je suis rentré.
Yeah, we can just drag it a little more like this.
Je suis rentré.
Yeah, better.
Baya?
Yeah, fine.
Baya!
Awesome.
T'es où?
There you go. Perfect. Okay, so we got this. And now what we can do is say, okay, you know, we want her to actually run into the scene. And I want to show one thing, right? Let's say I want her to like run really a lot into the scene. So we can actually add a new animation here in front of this one, which is going to be, where is it? Run, moving, run. Let's go. And if we press play here, she's going to run, but then she's going to stop running because, well, this animation is not looping. So we could stretch the animation. As you can see, it says hold because the animation is set to not loop. But if you go in the inspector here on the animation clip, you see that there is a loop option. If I click this, then you can see the loop durations, and that's really nice. It gives us a good feedback of, you know, how much we can loop here. So if I could say like, okay, I want to loop it twice. So I've loop 0 and loop 1. And there you go. Now it stops here, but we can then grab all the other things here and just snap them back into place. And now Charlie runs a little more before she stops. There we go.
Je suis rentré.
And this is still fine. Now, last thing we want to do is to make sure actually Charlie moves into the scene. She doesn't stay stationary. Now, depending on how you create your spine animation, sometimes you will have root motion on your spine animation, sometimes you don't. But here we don't. So what we want to do is to actually use the classic animation system for that little part. So we're going to select the spine game object of Charlie here that's on the scene, and we are going to add an animator component to it. Animator. Once again, we don't need to do anything special with the animator. We just leave it as is. And what we're going to do is use this animator to animate Charlie's position on the scene. And we're just going to get back to the timeline manager now and add an animation track. So we go on the starting position here. We are going to reference the spine game object here to animate Charlie's position. And what we want to do is position Charlie. So we select here. We select Charlie. So let's select her. Let's put her where we want her to start running. Let's start her here. And let us now get back to the timeline manager. And we want to press on this record button. So if any of you have already used Unity's animation system, you can actually directly access the animation from here, which is really cool. You don't have to open the animator window or whatever. You just click on here. And then first thing you want to do is select Charlie's thing here. You just want to position her. So you want to move it so it creates a keyframe. And that is where she's going to start. And then we're going to make her run. Let's look at the animation. This is approximately where she should stop running. So when she stops running, we set the track here. We keep recording. And we just say, we want Charlie to be here when the animation is finished. And then we can click on this again to stop recording. It is recording when you see recording here. And this is stop recording. So now if I move Charlie around here, it's not going to interfere with the animation. It's not going to remember that as a new keyframe and mess up with our work. So let's see what this looks like now. Charlie runs. And it's fine. But as you can see, she's kind of, you know, slowing down as she gets there. It's a little bit weird. We actually want this to be a more abrupt stop. So the reason why it's doing this, if you click on this thing here, it's going to show you the animation curves. And as you can see, by default, Unity animates with an ease in and ease out logic. So let me drag this down a little bit so I can, come on. I can't make this closer. Are you serious? No? Okay, let's make this bigger, I guess. So we can actually drag this to kind of zoom into the thing. Now, if you really want to go into depth on the animation, you could always click here and go edit in animation window, and that's gonna open the animator, and you're gonna be able to like fine tune the old way. But really, we don't need that here. All we want is to get rid of that ease in and ease out curve. You can just click this keyframe here. You do a right click and you say the left tangent, so whatever is on the left of the keyframe here. Instead, it's going to be a linear, and so that's going to be a linear value, and we also want this to be linear, so we just go here, right tangent, linear, and there we go. And we should have now a nice quick stop. There you go.
Je suis rentré.
It adds to the dynamic of the character.
Baya? Baya! T'es où?
And there you go. And now this was all debugged in here, but if we press play, we should see exactly the same thing happening when we start the game.
Je suis rentré.
And there you go. So this is how you create timeline animations. There's a lot to be covered in terms of all the things you can do with timeline. There's so many things. But yeah, this is where it's going to be at for this video. Hope you liked it. Stay tuned for more. And if you liked it, don't hesitate to give a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Thanks a lot. See you next time.